Hola, buenos días a todos. Eso es todo lo que voy a hablar en castellano, porque no puedo. Voy a hablar en inglés, pero menos rápido que ustedes en español. ¿Ok? Gracias, eso es todo. Good morning. So, let's get this going. What are we talking about when it comes to entrepreneurship? I live in Hong Kong. My wife is a vice principal at a school in Hong Kong, so we're living there. Before that, we were living in Chile. My wife is Chilean, well, I speak a bit of Spanish. Before that, Dubai. Before that, UK. So I have a global perspective on, I'm very fortunate for this global perspective on education. In Hong Kong, a few months ago, I was asked by a school to go and teach entrepreneurship to a group of 10-year-olds. 9-10-year-olds. So I was trying to work out what the best definition of entrepreneurship was for children of that age. And the definition that I came up with can't be translated into Spanish, apparently. Okay? The scratching of an itch. The best way to describe it, you know, if you're in a situation where your hands are full, you're carrying maybe shopping or luggage, bags, and perhaps you're walking upstairs and your hands are really full, yeah? What happens to your nose? Yeah? Okay, that's the itch. That's the itch, okay? So the scratching of an itch, for me, is what entrepreneurship is all about. Okay, do you understand? Yeah? It's a scratching of the itch. So there is something that's not quite right, something that's annoying or frustrating or could be better, or that's just getting under your skin. And then the entrepreneurship is the way of finding out how to go about scratching the itch. Yeah? So what I will share with you in this session are some of the itches that need scratching, some of the big ones. Some of the ones that are going to save the world. And it is that important. It is that important. And entrepreneurship is that important. It's about saving the world. So I'll share those ideas with you, and also how to go about the scratching. What is the mindset? What is the attitudes? What are the ways of being that help us scratch the itch? And then also share with you lots and lots of ideas to go about having the thinking that will allow you to scratch the itch. Because that's really my area, getting children to think for themselves, to think deeply, to think in a way that will make things different. But I want to start off, is that okay? And am I going at the right sort of speed? Yeah, all is good, very good. I want to start off in an unusual place, maybe. I want to start off in Venezuela. And I want to give an example of entrepreneurship, which has nothing to do with business, which has nothing to do with making money, but which is all to do with scratching an important itch. So you've got there we go, the scratching of an itch. The system, el sistema. In 1975, in Venezuela, there was a guy called Jose Antonio Breu, who saw an itch that needed scratching, who saw poverty, who saw children falling out of school, who saw violence, who saw drug problems, who saw crimes, who saw society in a state of disarray for the vast majority of the poor people in Venezuela. But he wasn't an entrepreneur at the time. He was an economist. But he was also a musician, a conductor. And he felt that maybe the best way to scratch the itch, or a way to scratch the itch, would be through music. But he didn't know how. And this is a big feature of entrepreneurship. You don't know how. Often when you speak to business people, proper business people, they say you have to have a business plan, you have to set out your targets. I've never had, in my business, independent thinking, which is nearly 25 years old, I've never had a business plan. It's always about making it up as you go along in so many ways. And you try things and then you see what happens. So, and we'll come back to that. But Breu said, well, let's just see what happens. I've got a garage and I'll let the word out in the neighborhood that I'm going to give some music lessons. I'll get some instruments, music lessons for free for children from the neighborhood, and we'll see if anybody turns up. 11 turned up. That was 1975. In 2015, he's got about 700,000 children each day turning up to what he calls nucleos, the little areas all around Venezuela, which become the centers for this sort of work. So from nothing to 11 to 700,000, 70 to 90% of the children that he works with are living in poverty. And it would be easy with children in poverty to think, well, we'll give them money, or we'll just do a few clubs, or we'll just make life a little bit easier for them. But his expectations were up here. He saw no difference between children in poverty and children of the rich, children of the wealthy, adults in the wealthy world. His expectations were up here. Another benefit, that the dropout rate is just under 7% dropping out of school for children who are part of El Sistema. So, I'm going to play you. Who's heard of? I know you've probably heard. Who has heard of El Sistema? Okay. I'm going to play you a short video of one of their orchestras in action. So these are poor children from the streets, been taught to play a musical instrument, been taught to work in an orchestra. Okay, by somebody with high expectations. As you watch this clip, there are the 4 questions that I'd like you to ask yourselves. And I'll give you a bit of time afterwards to think properly about these questions and maybe work with the person next to you. But yeah, what do you see? ¿Qué ves? ¿Qué piensas? ¿Qué te preguntas? ¿Qué podrías tomar prestado? Okay? Wow. It makes me smile every time I see that. So, I'll just give you just a minute, just with the people next to you, if that's okay, or on your own, I don't mind. Just those questions. So, just to begin with, just what did you see? Just with the person next to you, just talk it through in any language. Okay? What did you see? What could you borrow for your own project? ¿Qué podrías tomar prestado? Things you can borrow from there? Interesting. The El Sistema system, there are various countries around the world that are playing with it, using it, adapting it. I was in Edinburgh, in Scotland recently, and I met the Bishop of Edinburgh, the former Bishop of Edinburgh, and he had introduced El Sistema into Scotland in some of the most challenging communities in and around Scotland, to huge success, really effective. In Scotland, it's called big noise, they call it. And one of the things he said was that. He said it's not about the music. The music's important. He said even the instrument, it's not about the instrument. It's not about teaching a child to play an instrument. It's about the orchestra. Yeah, he says the orchestra is the instrument, not the individual instrument. It's about the collective coming together by working in an orchestra. Even in El Sistema, little children, the first thing they do is join an orchestra, even though their instruments are made out of paper. That's the first thing they do, because the orchestra is the instrument, and it's not about the music, it's about social transformation. This is from Palau. Yeah. I'm thinking you could probably replace enseña a tocar with become an entrepreneur. Yeah? It's the same sort of thing. Once you teach a child how to be an entrepreneur, that child will never be poor again. I realized as soon as I set up a business, everything had changed. I would never be unemployed. Right? I would never be poor because I knew how to do that thing. I wasn't waiting for somebody else to do it for me. So as soon as you teach a child how to be an entrepreneur, right, they will never be poor again. And then this is important as well. The expectations that Palau and El Sistema have for the children, as you've seen, is up here. They're world class. The video you've just seen is part of a concert. That's the middle part. The last part of the concert is a Mahler symphony conducted by Sir Simon Rattle, one of the world's leading conductors. So the expectations of these children, the boy on the xylophone was 10, 11. Expectations are up here. But it's not just for children who are, they have expectations for all children. And when it comes to children with special needs, exactly like they say, the soul doesn't have special needs. So in terms of expectations, and again with the same questions, what do you think? What do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder? What could you borrow? Just have a look at one more from the El Sistema. The choir with the white gloves. Why do you think they were wearing white gloves? Yeah? They're called the white glove choir. They're those children who are deaf. Sordos, deaf, yeah? And then you have the orchestra with children with various special needs. So what we're saying is even children who are profoundly deaf can be part of a choir. We will find a way. We'll do it through the white gloves, for example. So again, just 30 seconds or so, the 4 questions just with the people next to you. ¿Qué ves? ¿Qué piensas? ¿Qué te preguntas? ¿Qué podrías tomar prestado? Okay, just 30 seconds, please. By the way, there will be time for questions at the end. So I think if you have questions, put them on a piece of paper and they'll be collected up. Also, because it's hard to do audience sort of feedback in this session. But feel free if you want to email me, either via the Fundación Trilema or ian@independentthinking.co.uk. That's okay, or Twitter. If you want to feedback anything. They have a medal. Whenever you're in the orchestra in El Sistema, they have a medal. And on the medal, it has those 3 words. Just, again, I don't know, 10 seconds on your own or with the person next to you. What, if you were giving out medals for children to be part of your program, what 3 words what 3 words would it say on your medal? Okay, so just, I don't know, 20 seconds with the person next to you. What 3 words would it say on your medal? Okay. Be interesting to find out at some point what it says. But by the way, for those people not reading Spanish, that's to play and to fight. To play and to fight. So, we can set the bar very high when it comes to social transformation. We can set the bar very high when it comes to what we expect of young children. We can set the bar very high when it comes to what to expect from children with special needs, for example. So we have what we need in order to solve the problems. Okay, the answer is going to be in these children. So what are the biggest itches that need scratching of the 21st century? I read a book about 10 years ago by an English professor called James Martin, called The Meaning of the 21st Century. And in it, he talked about these, there are, I think, something like 13 major challenges that are facing the world currently. And by major, we mean challenges that could be the end of the world. All right? That important. And one of the things he said is that we need what he calls a transition generation. That we need a group of young people coming through who are able to see us through this difficult period as we address these major challenges. And I'm going to give you just a minute to think about what you think the 13 biggest challenges facing the world currently are, and that we need the entrepreneurial spirit to address. Okay? I used these 13 ideas in a book, one of the books that I wrote, called Why Do I Need a Teacher When I've Got Google? Okay, we'll do the answer to that on another occasion. There were good answers to that question. When I came to revise the book after a couple of years, and I did the research for these 13 points, every single one of them had got worse, just in the space of a couple of years. That revision was 3 years ago. Every single one of these has got worse in that 3 years as well. So these problems aren't going away. And we're not going to solve these problems. There's a lovely line from Einstein. He says, we can't solve the problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. We've created these problems. The children in your care, in your classes, are the ones who've got to solve them, but not by thinking our thoughts. Okay? So, 1 minute. Again, this is a very active session. I hope that's okay. Yeah. Some of you were up late last night, thinking I'll just relax, I'll have a little sleep this morning. It's not going to happen. Okay? So, back to you. 1 minute. What are the 13 biggest challenges facing the world at the moment? Okay? 1 minute. Allons-y. Okay, let's bring it back. Did you get 13? Let's have a think, okay? We'll go through them quite quickly because it gets a bit depressing. Climate change, yeah? It's a big one. These days for computing, everything goes on the cloud. So we think, well, we don't all have to have these big computers using up all this power. Everything just goes into the cloud, little white fluffy thing. The estimate is by 2020, the cloud will be consuming more energy than aviation. The cloud will be putting out more pollution than the aviation industry by 2020. So problems don't go away, we just shift them around. but we need to make them go away. Every year, some new infectious disease comes out. Chicken flu, bird flu, pig flu. There's all sorts of things out there. We've seen, and I'm aware that I'm in Spain, where the gap has been getting even bigger through 10 years of unnecessary austerity. But we're seeing that gap getting bigger throughout the world. Okay? That is going to have an effect. Something is going to happen. This is one that the numbers go up and up and up. And it's a huge thing in Europe at the moment. We're pulling ourselves apart because we don't know what to do with the migrant situation. Combine by the way, 51% of migrants are children who aren't in school. This is a lost generation. But there are entrepreneurs around the world looking at technology and how they can address that. There are people who are trying to create apps and devices that will allow children in refugee camps to learn. So it's an opportunity for entrepreneurs. If you combine 1 and 4, if you are a climate change refugee, if you've had to leave your home because of rising seawater, or because of the heat, or because of the effects of the heat, you have no legal status. You are not officially a refugee. For a refugee, you have to be leaving danger, for example, a war or persecution. We do not have a status for climate change refugees as yet. One of my associates in independent thinking is involved in the climate change talks. He was in Paris for COP21. He was involved in the Pope's encyclical on climate change. And he was talking to me recently saying that we have the problem in Europe of immigration. And he says, what will happen, what's the plan when Spain and Italy get too hot to live in? What's the plan? We're all going to Finland, probably. I think that might be the plan. Okay? But these are the questions that need to be addressed. They're not going to go away. We've seen the effects of climate change already. Weapons of mass destruction becoming inexpensive. There's a lot of nuclear materials around that we don't know where it is. Shanty cities, we're in Venezuela, Chile, Brazil, okay? Many parts of Africa. We know about that. Almost every week we know about that. The focus on Europe has taken away from the focus on people like ISIS and all the stuff that's going on there. It's interesting to see the scientists who won the prizes last night. But there are risks from extreme science. What happens if it goes wrong? That's a huge issue. In many parts of India, the aquifers, they're just about depleted. A big part of the problem that caused the Arab Spring was the farmers from the Nile, because the Nile was no longer irrigating the land, had no food, went to the capital, set up these shanty cities. There was no food, there were no jobs. It started to get difficult. There we go. Famine. The oceans. Do you know about the Pacific garbage patch? Have you heard about that? There's this huge swirl of tiny little bits of plastic in the Pacific that won't disintegrate. They will be there for thousands and thousands of years, going round and round. And one estimate is that the size of that patch is about twice the size of the United States. It's that, and it's deep. And the whole ecosystem eats this stuff, and it works its way through, and it gets into us. Of course it does. And then that one. I gave you the quote from Einstein. Another one from Einstein. He says, I don't know what the next world war will be fought with, but the one after that will be fought with sticks and stones. Yeah? So, these are some pretty big problems. These are some big itches that need scratching. We're not going to solve these problems. It's too late. But you can't solve the problems by using the same kind of thinking you used when you created them. Okay? So to what extent are we developing in our young people the ability to think differently, to develop this entrepreneurial spirit, to look at these problems and think, I can do something about that. I'm going to do something about that. And that might be little things going on to the bigger things. So, the scratching of an itch. So there are some big itches that need scratching. What do we need then in the sorts of people who are able to scratch these itches? Some research came out probably getting on for 15 years ago for a book called The Unemployables. People who had done well in business, who were great entrepreneurs, but who couldn't be employed by anybody else. And it identified 6 characteristics that they found in these entrepreneurs. Okay? So, positivity and bravery are 2 of them. Positivity is, there's a lot of work at the moment on mindsets, the growth mindset, the Carol Dweck stuff. Have you touched on that in your schools? Yeah. The positivity is saying, I can change, I can be better. It's not fixed. I can achieve, I can grow. No matter what happens, it'll be okay. The bravery is in there as well. For me, determination, the phrase that we use is, you can until you can't, and then you still can. There will always be people saying, no, you can't do that. So you keep going until you get to there, and then you keep going. Self-belief. What I say to young people when I'm working with them, if you don't believe in yourself, why should anybody else? And our beliefs determine our reality, don't they? Yeah, I'll give you an example, a good example. Who here is no good at singing? Who here can't sing? Loads of you, most of you. Who here was told by a teacher when they were about 7, you can't sing? Yeah. Please, will you just mime? Stand at the back. Yeah? As teachers, we infect beliefs on people. Yeah? Freud says we bleed our beliefs through every pore. If you say to this child, yeah, when you go to university, and if you say to this child, if you go to university, what's the difference? Quando? Si. And it's subtle, but it goes in. This child is the sort of child that's going to go to university. This child, who knows? So how do you make your beliefs explicit in the children that you're working with? How do you ensure that they believe, that they leave believing in themselves? Right? Because if they don't believe in themselves, why should anybody else? And I'm not talking about arrogance. I'm talking about self-belief. Right at the heart of what's needed. And I'm going to take you through some strategies for developing creativity in just a minute. And then that one. The children in the orchestras, that's one of the things that came through, the energy. When they're bouncing up and down on the cellos. The young people yesterday who were winning the award, you could see the energy. The guy who was the conductor, he was clapping with his hands, but clapping with his feet at the same time. His energy was... I have a phrase with my daughter when she was little. I used to say, her engine is bigger than she is. Yeah? So they're like that, but their energy, their engine, their motor is like out there. Sheer energy. So, The exercise I do with children is I give them the list, and then I get them to mark themselves out of 10 for each one. So let's do that with you, just on your own. A mark out of 10, with 10 being top, 1 being bottom. For each one of the 6, add it together, a score out of 60. Yeah? So do that now. Mark out of 10 for each one, add it up, score out of 60. Okay? For you personally. Okay? You have your score? Let's be honest. Who scored between 50 and 60? The people there with the energy. Yeah. Excellent. 40 to 50? 30 to 40? 20 to 30? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So what I do with the children, I give them that, they give themselves a score, and then I say, so what are you going to do between now and next week to raise your score? Even if you just choose one area, let's say bravery. I'm going to raise my hand in class where I normally wouldn't. I'm going to go and ask somebody a question, whereas normally I would be a little bit shy. So just some little thing, so that when you measure that score the following week, they've gone up. So you're focusing specifically on developing those 6 attributes of unemployable people. Yeah? So, creativity, I said we'd focus on that. When I was working with the children in Hong Kong a few months ago, I took them through these rules, what I call the rules for creativity. So I'll take you through them as well. I'll give you lots of little exercises for you to do, but also that you can take away and use with your children as well, just to get their brains going, get them in a creative frame of mind. So, the 13 rules of creativity. Number 1, there are no rules. Okay? Goodbye. This is a good example of that, if we can get this to work. You might have heard the phrase thinking outside the box. Yeah? But not many people seem to know where it came from. Yeah, thinking outside the box, thinking beyond the box. That was where that idea came from. So sometimes we see limitations that aren't actually there. So if we start from the starting point of there are no rules, we can make it up as we go along. We can do what we want. We do what we want within reason. I met somebody last week, an entrepreneur, and he said there are 3 bottom lines in a business. 3 bottom lines, the things that must be covered. The money, okay, it needs money to survive. We need to get there. We've got mortgages to pay. Doing good, that's the bottom line. It's not an option. It's important. And then thirdly, the environment. So the 3 bottom lines of any business: making a profit, doing good, care for the environment. Okay? Within that, if they're the rules, beyond that there are no rules. And then there's that, to break the rules. Andre Breu, Maestro Breu from the El Sistema, when he's asked, well, it's called El Sistema, the system. What is the system? And he says, well, it changes. We've got an idea of what we do, but then, and you can copy that, but this time next week it might be different. So the system is the fact that there is no system. There are no rules. We will do whatever we need to do. The little children playing the paper orchestra, one of the reasons that came about is because they didn't have the money to buy little children proper instruments. So they just found a way of doing it by making them out of paper. So by accident, they created this situation whereby children are learning to be part of an orchestra at the age of 4. So they are making it up as they go along, and that's the phrase that he used: being and not being on an ongoing sort of basis. Tom Peters is an American business guru. Have you heard of Tom Peters? Yeah. He was speaking in London a few years ago to 500 top business leaders. And one of the things he talked about was the American soldier who had won the most medals in the Second World War. He had got every medal that America could offer, plus a couple from France and Belgium. But the only medal the soldier didn't get was the Good Conduct Medal, the Doing What You're Told medal. Right? And Tom Peters was saying in his presentation that we've got too many people working for us who have been getting Good Conduct medals since the age of 5. And he added, never employ them, never promote them. Okay? To what extent are you developing children who are sitting there and doing what they're told on an ongoing basis? One of my is that the right thing to do? Is that the right thing to do on an ongoing basis? One of my favorite phrases, I can't remember where this is from, it's better to seek forgiveness than ask permission. It's better to seek forgiveness than ask permission. Yeah? To what extent are you encouraging, if we're talking about the teaching of entrepreneurship, to what extent are you encouraging that sort of thinking in your classrooms? Or are you teaching them to sit down, sit still, be quiet, do what they're told? The phrase I use with teachers in England is, or the question I put to them is, what are they learning while you're teaching them? What are they learning while you're teaching them? So I can do that. I can be lecturing from the front. You can be writing it down. I can give you a test. But what are you not learning? Working as a group, problem solving, thinking for yourself. What are you learning? Sit down, be still. The expert will tell you how it is. So what are they learning while you're teaching them? To what extent are you encouraging this? So here's another one, another of these rules. Reality is just a snapshot. Reality is just a snapshot. So a quick creative thinking exercise, 1 minute. You have a pen? Yeah, you have a pen. On your own or with the person next to you, I want 10, in a minute, 10 uses for a pen other than writing. 10 uses for your pen other than writing. 1 minute, off you go. There are no rights or wrongs. Okay. Did you get 10? Yeah, excellent. So whatever's in front of you, whatever we see as the way the world is, isn't fixed. It's just a brief moment in time, and it'll be different. But the difference starts up here. So it's trying to get that idea across to young people. You can make the world different. It's just the way that it is at the moment. But that change has got to start here. Everything's created twice. That's the first one. Yeah, you break to rebuild. That's an impressive painting. If you were able to do that, you would be happy. Who painted that? Whose mother is that? Seen that one? It's the same guy who painted that. Okay, it was Picasso's mother. Picasso said every act of creation starts with an act of destruction. The first point in creating something new is breaking down what's already there. A head teacher won an award from Apple, an innovation award in England a few years ago. And in his acceptance speech, he used the phrase, this one. He said, teachers need to stop doing the wrong things well. So we do these things that we've always done because that's the way we do them. Our routines, our set ways of working, the way a school is organized, the way a class is organized. But maybe those are the things, even though they are working well, that are getting in the way of progress. So, my question to you, what might you have to go away from here and break to move things forward, even though it's working well? Every act of creation starts with an act of destruction. Yeah? Okay. What else have we got? Everything is linked. The creative people see links with everything. And the non-creative people just don't see the links. As soon as you start looking for the links between anything and everything, you will see them. They will be there. Okay? I'll give you an example. In pairs, in twos, one of you choose an animal. Choose an animal, cat, dog, slug, anything. 30 seconds, 3 ways that entrepreneurship is like that animal. 3 links between entrepreneurship and the animal you've chosen. 30 seconds, okay? Go. Okay. Did you get 3? More than 3? Okay. Everything is linked. Nothing is certain. Okay, nothing is certain. We tend to teach children facts, certainties. This is the way that the world is. But we're living in a hugely complex world. The world, our communities, our schools, our classrooms, they're what's called complex adaptive systems. Everything is changing all of the time. So we're living with uncertainty. To what extent are you helping children be comfortable with uncertainty? Because entrepreneurs know that nothing is certain. If they worked in the bank, they would get a salary at the end of the month. It would be fine. For themselves, there is no certainty. Who knows what's going to happen? But they need to be comfortable with uncertainty. One of the ways that I teach children to be comfortable with uncertainty is through what I call thunks. Thunk. It's the noise the brain makes when you start thinking about these sorts of questions. Okay? A thunk is a question where the answer is either yes, no, or something else. And there are no rights and wrongs. There are no rights or wrongs. Yes, no, something else. Tell us what you think. That's the nature of a thunk. One 7, 8-year-old boy, after doing some thunks with me, at the end he said to me, I've just realized how big life is. Just by having a complete stranger asking stupid questions like, this is my favorite one, is a broken down car parked? Is a broken down car parked? Okay? The answer is either yes, no, something else, no rights or wrongs, 30 seconds with the people next to you. Yes, no, something else. Is a broken down car parked? Off you go. Okay. Who thinks, yes, it is parked? See? Who thinks, no? Who thinks other? Who's saying, well, I want more information? What color is the car? You can use this throughout the curriculum at school. But I had some maths teachers telling me once, you can't do philosophy, and these are philosophical questions, you can't do philosophy and maths. The answer is either yes or no, right, wrong, 7, not 7. And they said in maths, there are no grey areas. But maths and philosophy go back a long way. Yeah? Plato, above his door, said only geometers may enter here. Yeah. So the math teachers were saying, well, give me an example. So I said, all right, what's a third of love? Yeah? Okay. They couldn't answer that. But children can answer that. A third of love, le. Yeah. One child said toothbrush. Why toothbrush? The parents had separated, but were now coming back together. And the first thing the father had done is left his toothbrush at mum's house. Third of love. Yeah? What I find, though, doing these sorts of questions, and there are loads of them, is there a safe way to die? Can you wash a hole? Right? Is it right to bully a bully? Yeah? What I find is that children, the academically able children, the ones who do very well at school in the traditional way, have the most trouble dealing with these sorts of questions. They're the ones who are saying, well, I want to know what is the answer? And you're saying, but there are no answers. So, for example, you can ask a question like, is there more future or past? Actually, yeah, 30 seconds with the people next to you. Is there more future or past? One, the other, something else. Off you go. Okay. Who thinks there's more? Who thinks there's more future? Who thinks there's more past? Who thinks they're the same? Who thinks other? Yeah? One group of 15-year-olds I was working with, this girl said there's more future. And I said, okay, how come? And she said, well, if you believe in the afterlife, it goes on forever. And you're not saying yes or no or right or wrong. It's a Socratic dialogue. Socrates got his students to think by just constantly with the questions, probing with the questions. All right, so what about, so you flip it. What if you don't believe in the afterlife? So the girl, she said, well, it still goes on forever. Then you clarify it. So what you're saying is that whether you believe in the afterlife or not, it still goes on forever. She said, yes. This boy next to me says, so what's the point of religion then? Powerful question. Powerful question. The front page of New Scientist magazine, round about the same time, the front page, what's the point of religion? It's a powerful, relevant, respectful scientific question. So this boy suddenly is starting to ask questions. We've got his curiosity going about the world. Right, so he now will go into the religious studies lesson, pulling the learning towards him. Right? So, to what extent are you encouraging uncertainty? And the children, the academic children, when you ask them a question like, is there more future or past? They'll say, I don't know. And you say, I know you don't know. Nobody knows. But tell me what you think. And they say, I don't know. I know. Tell me what you think. They seem unable, when asked, to be able to think for themselves. They know a lot. And there's a link between memory and IQ. There's a link between memory and doing well at school, in exams, of course. And there's a place for knowing. But the scientific method, you start with thinking, hypotheses. Maybe the world is like this. Then you do your experiments, your research, to identify whether the world is how you thought it might be. So thinking to knowing. But dealing with uncertainty is part of that. Have you heard of a guy called Richard P. Feynman? He's a Nobel Prize-winning physicist. He died not that long ago. His first public lecture, he had Einstein and Niels Bohr sitting on the front row. He was involved in the Manhattan Project. Yeah? This is him speaking. Before that, back to Tom Peters. Remember I said about the academically able children? This is his message about them. Yeah? If they're not screwed up, yeah, by the age of 23, when they leave school, they're never going to do anything interesting. But we tend to value the children who are doing well, who are getting the answers, who are getting 10 out of 10. The biggest disservice we can do children is to not let them fail. If you have a child who keeps getting 10 out of 10, neither of you are trying hard enough. Yeah? Right, so, Richard P. Feynman.
You see, one thing is I can live with doubt and uncertainty and not knowing. I think it's much more interesting to live not knowing than to have answers which might be wrong. I have approximate answers and possible beliefs and different degrees of certainty about different things, but I'm not absolutely sure of anything. And then many things I don't know anything about, such as whether it means anything to ask, why we're here, and what the question might mean. I might think about it a little bit. If I can't figure it out, then I go to something else. But I don't have to know an answer. I don't feel frightened by not knowing things, by being lost in the mysterious universe without having any purpose, which is the way it really is, as far as I can tell, possibly. It doesn't frighten me.
So, I don't feel frightened by not knowing. To what extent do you work with your children in such a way that where they're happy and not frightened by levels of uncertainty? And the little questions like that can help. Let me give you one more. You go into a shop that sells newspapers. You read the newspaper. You put it back. You walk out. You don't pay. Is that stealing? Yes or no? Okay, 30 seconds. Off you go. Okay, bring you back. Who thinks that is stealing? That is stealing? Who thinks it's not stealing? Who thinks other? Did any of you use the grape from the supermarket defense? Yeah, that's just testing. So, the thunks are good fun for helping children deal with what isn't certain. Be comfortable with that. See the same but think different. Again, it's a bit like the reality is a snapshot. You see what everybody else sees, but different thoughts come into your head, and that can be encouraged and developed. So this is a really good example. If you can see that, so you've got two pigeons on a table in a McDonald's, I think, and on the other side is one pigeon. Now, I think was taken at a station. It's busy. Lots of people will have seen that. And lots of people have walked by and gone, oh, pigeons. One guy on Twitter saw it and wrote, saw a pigeon having a job interview. I hope he got it. 7,840 retweets. Fantastic. To what extent do you encourage children to look at the world and then think different thoughts? To think different thoughts. Steel shoes. Steel shoes. Sometimes when we're generating ideas, we do them from our own perspective, from our own shoes. And then we run out of ideas. And then we think, well, that's it, I've thought. All we need to do is to step into somebody else's shoes and we'll get more ideas. So another exercise for you, in your little pairs, choose a famous person, living or dead. And then in 30 seconds, if you put that person in charge of education, 5 things you'd see different. So famous person in charge of education, 5 things that would change if that person were, 5 things that would change in your classroom, let's be precise, if that person were in charge of education. Okay? 30 seconds, if you go. 5 things. Okay? With the children, next time you're brainstorming, get them to choose their ideas, choose a famous person, a cartoon character, somebody from history, get into their shoes. You're going to get more ideas and different ideas. There are as many ideas as there are shoes. See what's there, think new thoughts. We're going to run out of time, but an exercise for you to take away with the pen, and children like doing this exercise, in 30 seconds, 3 ways you could improve that pen. 3 ways you could improve that pen, or 3 ways you could improve whatever it might be, a cup, a mug, a book, a classroom. So you're seeing what's already there, but new thoughts are coming into your head. Teachers, sometimes we play the game of guess what's in the teacher's head. We ask a question, knowing the answer, we will go round until we get the answer. Yeah? Sometimes there's a place for that. But there's also a place for going for as many right answers as we can. A French philosopher once said, nothing is more dangerous than an idea when it's the only idea you've got. Notice with these exercises, I'm saying 5 ideas, 3 ideas, as many as you can in 30 seconds. With boys, especially in the classroom, they like to finish first. Finished? So to say to them, is that your first answer or your best answer? And constantly bouncing it back. You've got 1 minute, in pairs, 5 answers to this question. Yeah? So you're moving away from the game of guess what's in the teacher's head, so they're not dependent on you for right or wrong. This is important. So we're talking about lunging at the first question that comes into their head. Not dealing in answers all the time, but dealing in questions. To what extent do you use these questions regularly in your classroom? What I'll do, by the way, this PowerPoint, I'll make it available so you can have this as a resource and you can use this. I'll pass it through to Carmen and you can take it away. Or to what extent do you use these questions regularly? Do your children use these questions in their conversations with each other? And could they? If you had these questions on the wall. And maybe my favorite one. Because what you're doing there, you're working on their self-esteem. My thoughts count. I'm not waiting to be told what to think. My thoughts count. Who said that? For those in English, it's about the need for a pedagogy of questioning. That teachers ask questions that answer questions the children haven't asked. Who said that? Yeah. 30 seconds. 5 questions that come into your head from this picture. Just on your own or with the person next to you, 5 questions that are stimulated by this picture. Okay? A colleague of mine uses the question, where's the curriculum in that? Wherever you look, you will find curriculum, you will find material you can use. And the starting point is, okay, children, let's just ask questions about this stimulus. From an entrepreneurial point of view, another thing you can do is just say, where are the entrepreneurial opportunities in that? Yeah? Because there are entrepreneurial opportunities wherever you look, in anything and everywhere, there are opportunities. So encouraging children to see these opportunities that other people aren't seeing. So you could do the same exercise with that picture. Helping children be themselves. And like I say, I will give you this as a resource to take away so you can spend a bit more time on it. But this multiple intelligence idea, it's been around a while. But for me, it's just a really useful way of knowing that there are different sorts of people in our classes and helping them understand that and be comfortable with that. Because what we tend to focus on is logical, mathematical, and verbal linguistic. And if you've got those, you do well at school. And all these others, we can lose. And they lose themselves. To what extent are you making sure that in your lessons, there are opportunities for all of those intelligences to come to the fore, at least once, every now and again, and not just focus on the few. Yeah? So knowing who you are is an important part of the creativity. Being yourself, being comfortable with that, like the entrepreneurs we saw yesterday. This is one of my favorites. You refuse. I refuse to think the way that everybody else thinks. I refuse to do it the way that everybody else does. I refuse to do it the way it's always been done. In independent thinking, we have a motto, which is that one. If everybody's doing it like that, we'll do it like that. Otherwise, we may as well just be everybody else. And that isn't the entrepreneurial spirit. The logo we're using at the moment is that one. Yeah? The awkward fish. To what extent are you an awkward fish? To what extent are you encouraging your children to be those awkward fish? Which brings us back to that list. Now, some of you were scoring below 50, below 40. There's one group of children, there's one group, children, who score 10 out of 10 pretty much on all of those all of the time. For me, this is the best example of that. Who are we to say what children can or can't do when we give them the opportunity? Somebody said maybe the cushion should have been over here for the head. But just what children are capable of and how they exhibit those 6 characteristics, 10 out of 10 on an ongoing basis. How can we nurture that and bring that out of them? And then I'll leave you with this question. Because to be an entrepreneur or to embrace alternative ways of teaching, you do need to stand up and you do need to stand out. But it's interesting to see what happens when you do. Like José Antonio Abreu all those years ago in Venezuela.
A bit of water, no? Now?
A bit?
Of water.
Thank you. Yes.
I am thank you very much for your speech, for your inspiring speech this morning here in Girona. My first question is not very original. It's not mine, it's yours. It's in the program, and you've talked about it in your speech. Why do we need a teacher when we go Google? You said your book, but you didn't say a right answer to this question.
Yes. If you're not very good as a teacher, then we don't need you. I said I lived in Chile. My girls went to a school in Santiago that was one of the top 5 schools, international schools. The model of teaching, the pedagogy, was sit in rows, teacher at the front, blah, 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 copy, memorize, test, grade, move on. That was it. Sometimes the teachers were into technology and they would get to copy off a PowerPoint. But that was it. And when I went to the teachers and said, my daughters aren't learning, the response was, well, we're teaching them, get a tutor. That was the response. But it's trying to say to teachers, your job isn't to teach children. Your job is that they learn. It's different. So after about 5 months of this, my girls were so demotivated, depressed, sad, by going to school. And that's just wrong. I rang them up one lunchtime and just said, just come home. Forget it. Forget that school. Just come home. They learned more that afternoon with their laptops, using Khan Academy and other online materials. They learned more in one afternoon than they had for the whole of the 5 months they'd been at that school. So their learning went from that to that. How? Instantly. How? By just stopping them from being taught badly. So why do I need a teacher if I've got Google? If you are no good, if all you are doing is giving me stuff that I can get at home with my laptop, I don't need you. But if you're good, then I need you now more than ever. So the question becomes, what is a good 21st century teacher? And it's more than just passing the knowledge on, because I can get that from other sources. So remember the question, what are they learning while you're teaching them? So when you start answering that question and you start looking at some of the things we've touched on this morning, and that I'm sure Alison and the other panel members will touch on this afternoon, then you start to unpick what, and also to celebrate the really good stuff you are already doing. Then you have your answer to that question. Does that make sense? Is that clear?
Yeah, but you said there is another question.
Yep.
So what's a good teacher? Maybe as you travel all over the world,
Yeah.
and you live all over the world,
Yeah.
and you've seen many teachers
Yeah.
in many schools,
Yeah.
there's something in common between teachers, between good teachers all over the world.
There is. It's, if I had to boil it down to one thing, I would say relationships. To actually, that the teacher is working with them as individuals, as people. Around that, there are also things like expectations. There's a sense of community. Good teachers help, we need knowledge, but good teachers help children know where to find the knowledge and know good knowledge from bad knowledge. Because not everything on the internet is true. It's not a repository of true facts. So it helps them to start to critically evaluate the information, the ideas, and to contribute to the knowledge, which is, for example, with Wikipedia. If you see something on Wikipedia about your community, you can change it. You can add to it. You can create your own page. So they start to become not just the recipients of other people's facts, they start to create the facts, they start to create reality. And back to Freire, he says, we teach children to read and write. We need to teach young people to read and write in order that they can reread and rewrite the world. So read and write the word, to reread and rewrite the world. And for me, the good teachers are working at that level. They do far more than just get children through the test. They do get children through the test, but they do far more than that. And those are the things I look for in a good teacher. And the starting point for me is the relationships. That's what I see. You see, the minute you go into a classroom and you see that buzz, that creativity, that electricity, you know there's something special going on.
I suppose you all know you can write your questions on the piece of paper and bring it to us. Some of the girls with the blue t-shirts can take them.
Yeah.
But I have one more.
Okay, go on. Good.
And what about hope? Because when we talk about those itches, wars, diseases, some kind of sadness come to us.
Yeah.
What about hope? What have you seen in those schools all over the world that make us think there's hope? We can see there are schools that are changing their work there.
Hope is such an important concept. Another of my books was about motivation and about having internal motivation, to want to do it for yourselves. And there are like 7 keys, and number 7 is hope. And Napoleon said a leader is a dealer in hope. And you as leaders of learning, you have to be those dealers in hope. That children leave your presence with higher levels of hope than when they enter. And it even works at a neurological level. There's a phrase, hope fires a neuron. When we feel hopeful, electricity fires in the higher regions of our brain, our higher order thinking, our neocortex, compared to when we're hopeless, where the brain literally closes down. So when you say to that child, you'll go far, that's amazing, you're capable of so much, you literally light up their brains. When you say to that child, you can't sing, you're literally, chemically, electrically, closing their brains down. So To what extent are you dealers in hope? To what extent are your schools hopeful places? And the best definition that I've come across of hope is this idea that things can get better. It's two parts. Things can get better, and I can do something about it. Things can get better, but, and the important bit, I can do something about it. And when you teach children these entrepreneurial skills, when they start thinking for themselves, when they start doing things that are starting to make a difference in the universe, then they suddenly realize that they are in a position where they can do something about it. They're not just passive recipients of the way the world is. They're active in what they choose to do. So things can get better, and I can do something about it. So hope is right at the heart of all of this sort of stuff, absolutely.
So we can see hope in those schools you see
Yeah.
all over the world.
Yeah, children, and I see it, of all the schools and of all the countries, I think the schools in Hong Kong, like my wife's school, international school in the middle of Hong Kong, children are just so full of ideas and inspiration and opportunities to make a difference, to work on social issues. They do very well academically with the IB, but they are driven to actually realize that there are these challenges and we can do something about it. That's, of all the schools I've seen around the world, that's where I've seen it most.
So they work with challenges in the school, with children, teachers with children making challenges in the classrooms.
In the classroom and then beyond, outside the school as well. Yeah.
Evaluation.
Yes.
Measure. How do we objectively measure positive, bravery, determination, those qualifications we have made, 1 to 10?
You can, the score of 1 to 10, which is a personal score, you can triangulate. So you get the child to identify where they think they are and why. Where is the evidence for you saying you're a 7 out of 10 for bravery? You can give them a score, because if you've got your relationships right, you'll know the children. But then get their peers to give them a score as well. So it becomes this sense, this 360-degree interpretation of how good they are. Don't give them a test, a written test. Just look at the evidence. But then hope, you're not saying it's fixed. You're saying this is where you are now. It's just a snapshot. Okay? In a week's time, we'll take the measurements again, and let's look for evidence so that we can increase your score, maybe decrease your score, because we all fluctuate. So I think that's a good way of doing it. Just a nice, simple, easy way to assess it.
Mm-hmm. A teacher has told us that you have given us some advices to work creativity with children. But can you give us some advice to work creativity with ourselves as teachers?
That's a whole new training day. Any of those ideas can work for you as the other people's shoes. Next time you're planning a particular lesson, how would Madonna deliver this lesson? How would the king deliver this lesson? Just choose. And how would Homer Simpson deliver this lesson? By asking those questions, you immediately generate different ideas. And I've done that exercise with many teachers. Also, allowing the children to run more of the lessons. We have a concept in independent thinking. We have sort of two themes: brave heads and lazy teachers. So head teachers who are brave enough to say, this is what our children need, and this is what we're going to do. And then teachers who step back from the teaching and let the children get on a whole lot more with the learning. And allowing the children to plan the lessons and deliver the lessons and assess the lessons and summarize the lessons. When you start moving into that way, then immediately you're going to find ideas and creativity that you wouldn't have had before by delivering it the way that you think. And then the last one, I suppose, is the refuse. Like, I was a French teacher when I taught. I refused to use textbooks. I hate textbooks. Sorry if you're a publisher of textbooks. Okay? So that refusal immediately meant I had to then find the creative way around it. So it becomes harder But that's not the issue. It's not about hard. It's not about easy. It's about finding the creative ways. So just refuse. Refuse to do the assembly that you, or the gathering, or the tutorial period in the way that everybody else is doing it. Refuse to set homework, full stop. Refuse to set homework that is a waste of time. So this is where, for example, flipping the classroom, and I know you're looking at this, I know in Finland they're looking at this, where you're saying, we're just going to turn it on its head. I refuse to do things that just aren't working, so I'm going to do it differently. So lots of those ideas you can take and you can use for you. And borrowing ideas from somewhere else. You see an idea on a television program, that'll work as a lesson. The ideas are all there.
We could dress up as Homer Simpson.
You could dress up as Homer Simpson, I don't recommend. Yellow.
Maybe the last question, because we don't have much time.
Yes.
Any advice to teachers that feel a bit strange in their schools because maybe they are alone?
That's quite often the case. A lot of our work in 25 years has been supporting teachers who feel alone. Another line from Einstein, he says, a question that often makes me hazy is, am I or are the others crazy? Yeah. All of you here, it's the others who are crazy. Right? You're not alone. You've got this network, and I met some of you last night and today, which is a powerful, creative network. You've also got people working around the world. You'll hear more from England, from Finland this afternoon. Just via online forums, via seeing what's going on, you know that there are many, many people who think the way that you think in terms of the way education could be. And I know sometimes in a school, especially if you don't have the support of the leadership, it can be hard. But when you close that door on your classroom, you can do what you like. And if you can create a buzz where the children are leaving your classroom talking to the other teachers about what went on, then you know you're making a difference. This is a military phrase, but there are two ways to change an organization: to blow it up or infect it. Okay, you are agents of infection. You can go and infect your schools with this sort of thinking.
And a word to finish, just a word.
Okay.
Try it.
One word, okay.
Which is the biggest itch to scratch in the schools?
For me, it's about getting children to think for themselves.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Has been a great pleasure.
All right, okay. Gracias. Okay, gracias.